Commission. As is typical with meetings of the Solid Waste Authority, we open with an invocation, and then we pledge allegiance. And I ask you to bow your heads, please. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Now, if you'll join me in giving the pledge of allegiance. Mr. Sam Grave, who's our newest appointee, who just walked in. And of course, I think you all know John Long. Let me get closer to this mic. They fuss at us if we don't keep our mouth close to the mic. And the Homewood Hilton is named after John. I'm sure you've heard of it, or someone in his family. We have Emma Ruth Britton, who is the board's attorney. We also have our chairman. And so, Mr. Chairman, would you please join us at the table, if you care to? Lance Thompson is chairman of our commission. I'm glad that he thinks enough of what we're doing here to take time from he's in the eat, sleep, and entertain business at Lakewood Campground, and they're very busy down there. I'm sorry, Ocean Lakes. Boy, I knew I was going. I've never presided at one of these meetings, and I knew, it's a trial run for me. Thank you, Lance. Let me say that I have read the submittals, as I'm sure my colleagues have, and the one that we replied to was, I believe it was addressed to Mr. Michael Allen. Is that, would you raise your hand? Are you going to be the spokesperson today? Yes. Okay, that doesn't mean others can't speak. It's just that I wanted to know who I was addressing myself to. Let me say that my sympathy is with you. I spent 40 years with an oxyacetylene torch in my hand, sweating with the goggles, and knowing I know what it's like to cut up metal in July. It is not an easy job, and I have been to your webpage. You have an excellent webpage, especially for a small startup family business. And I know that we had a mutual friend who contacted me after family business, Genco, burned. And I want you to know that that business is in the hands of my sister's children. And I don't have anything to do with that. That will be a decision to be made by them. But I noticed that the same steel that I built and then worked under for years is still standing, even though they had a fire. I don't know what they plan to do, but they have not taken down the steel. I know that you were involved with taking down the steel at AVX. I put a lot of that up. I was saddened to see that go down, but it didn't fall down while we had it up. It took you fellows to go down there and take it down. Now, we have spent a lot of time looking at your appeal, and let me say it gets into some very interesting questions that I'm sure that our staff will take into account going forward, but they're not necessarily applicable to the matter at hand. And so with that regard, I'm going to ask our attorney, Ms. Emma Ruth Britton, to take things from here and give you what our position is and give you an opportunity to speak if you care to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a hearing on Allen Scrap Metal's appeal of the decision of the Horry County Solid Waste Authority to award a contract to Waccamaw Metal based on its response to the authority's request for proposal numbers 014-15, purchase of scrap metal. For purposes of the record, the administration has a copy of the request for proposals in its file. It also has a copy of the proposals of Allen Scrap Metal and Waccamaw Metal, which may be part of the file for purposes of this appeal. And then a letter dated June 1, 2015, in which Allen Scrap Metal appealed the award of this award to Waccamaw. And this appeal states 2 grounds for the appeal. And in summary manner, I'm going to state those 2 grounds for the record. The first ground being a contention that the bid response was not completed in full by Waccamaw, and the second ground for appeal being that the proposal required the bid to be based on the 5th business day of the month, which it is contended is overly ambiguous. A copy of the June 1, 2015 letter from Allen Scrap Metal will also be made part of the record for the appeal. And then the appeal was denied in writing by the Horry County Solid Waste Authority agent and executive director, Danny Knight, and Mr. Knight's letter will also be made part of the record for the appeal. A copy of that letter was sent to Allen Scrap Metal, so you should have the position of Mr. Knight as purchasing agent and the explanation for the denial of the appeal. Yeah, you did receive the letter. Thank you. Ms. Bidding, is there any additional information that should be made a part of the record?
The only other letter I have is the one that we received from Allen Scrap Metal dated June 23rd, appealing that letter from Mr. Knight.
Okay, great. We will make that a part of the record also.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this time, is there anything else? All right, is there anything else from the administration as to the record or the grounds for appeal? All right, it would be appropriate at this time for Mr. Allen for you to come and state your position as to why you think the authority's decision and the affirmance by Mr. Knight as purchasing agent to award the contract to Waccamaw Metal is an error or should otherwise be reversed. And so the podium is yours.
All right, you said that this was your trial run, and this is my trial run because I've never spoke here either. So we're going to see how this goes. I'd like to thank you guys first and foremost for being here, for allowing us this time, to speak with you and kind of share our story, I guess, as it is. There's really 2 issues that we have. Danny Knight did a great job, explaining in his rebuttal letter the first issues that we came up with. But really, at the heart of this whole thing, there's 2 other issues. The first issue is we feel that if we at Allen Scrap Metal and Waccamaw had both bid this contract on the same day using the same baseline numbers, then our bid could and would have been much more competitive. That's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is that we believe that the stipulation that you have inside of your bid packet where it states that all bids must be based on the 5th business day, we believe that that is not advantageous to the Solid Waste Authority itself. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, hopefully maybe only 10 or 15 minutes here, so I'm going to just jump right into this. The first issue, when I had brought it up in the original letter, Danny Knight sent the rebuttal, and I received it, and it stated that neither us nor Waccamaw had bid the contract as requested, and I'll take him at his word for that. But what it does clearly show, regardless of how it was bid differently. You can see it in the comparison where it shows the side-by-side bids, and it shows the prices for the month along with the correlating percentages. The fact that it was bid different is the whole issue for number one, because bids nowadays have gotten rather complex. They have, some simpler things in them, such as operations costs or profit margins. But then if you really want to make a good bid, you need to think about your weighted average cost of capital. You need to think about your net profit value. One of the biggest factors in a net profit value is your expected cash flow. The day that it was bid on directly correlates with our expected cash flow, because it determines what we have to pay you guys for the scrap. So if you start out using different baseline numbers, then it doesn't matter that maybe I have a lower operating cost than Waccamaw. It doesn't matter that maybe I require a lower profit margin than Waccamaw. It doesn't even matter that maybe I have a better understanding of the market than Waccamaw. My price still isn't reflected fairly because I started with different baseline numbers that make a huge impact in my final goal. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is that you guys want to use the 5th business day. Now, when I first started doing this bid, I thought of it almost like the stock market. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played the stock market or not, but in the stock market, there's a beta. And this beta tells you the riskiness of each or any stock. Each stock has its own beta against the risk-free market, which would be your treasury bills or your T-notes or stuff like that. Well, when I was doing this bid, I have what I call a deviation or a variance. So the deviation is how far historically the AMM price deviates from the price that I can actually get paid. I don't mind telling you guys, in this situation, it was 24.76%. Now, when done on a day-to-day, day versus day, your variance was 0. There was no variance. It averaged out perfectly. But when done on a month-to-month, especially when you throw in that you have to do it on the 5th business day, which is a floating day, it could be the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th, according to the month, my variance went through the roof. And I thought to myself, why is this? And what are the effects of this? So in asking myself that question, I started doing some research. I went back, and what I saw from a common sense standpoint, because I had a little prior knowledge of the AMM, if the AMM changes prices monthly on or around the 6th, historically, every month, and you're bidding on a day that could be the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th, according to the month, then logic would tell you that leaves the possibility of fluctuations in the market being missed. Now, to provide you guys an example of this, we'll go through a hypothetical situation. Let's say that this month, in July, let's pretend that the 5th business day in July was indeed the 5th calendar day. That's not the case for this month, but let's say it was. And let's say that the commodity that you've tied it to, which was your scrap auto shred South Carolina, was at $1,000 a ton. Don't we wish? And let's say that the next day, the 6th, the AMM changes its prices, as it is prone to do on the 6th, to $1,500 a ton. Again, don't we wish? Now, next month in August, let's say that the 5th business day is the 7th calendar day of the month. And again, on the 6th, the AMM changes its prices back to $1,000. If you had been priced using the 5th business day, your prices would have looked like $1,000 for July, $1,500 for August. If you had been priced using the 5th business day as opposed to the 5th calendar day, which is what I just said, I hope I didn't say that backwards, the 5th business day, your prices would have been $1,000 for July and $1,000 for August. So you miss an entire month of fluctuation because you're being bid on a floating day, and your floating day is basically just missing the market each time. Now, that's hypothetical and that's all good and well. But a lot of people want to know about real numbers. So if you'll allow me, Dan, will you pass that out? I did some more researching. I did some more digging. What I did was I looked up all the AMM pricing for the past 12 months. I cross-referenced it with calendars for the past year. I notated, save one of those for me, please. I notated the months that had a difference between the price of the 5th versus the 5th business day. Now, keep in mind, I told you this was 12 months. You're only seeing 4 in front of you. That's because the other 8 months, the price you would have gotten paid on the 5th versus the 5th business day were the same, so there was no need to include them. Notice also that this is speculated on 420 tons per month. That's just a good round number that I thought you guys could hit. Also notice that the percentage is the percentage that Waccamaw gave. This is just to show you that the days make the difference. You can't try to say your day and your percentage versus his day and his percentage. That's not the point that we're getting at. The point that we're getting at is the days make a difference, so you use the exact same percentage throughout. So what you'll see is that in these 4 months where there was a difference in price, if you'll go to the very last row to the right and go all the way to the bottom at $289,000, that's the amount that you guys would have gotten paid at 52% if you guys had been using the 5th calendar day. If you go one row to your left and go to the bottom, you'll see 263. This is the amount that you guys would have gotten paid, 52.48% of the AMM pricing based on the 5th business day. This is a difference of over $26,000. Taken into account with just those 4 months, that's over 10% that you guys are losing. So that's pretty much the whole point of my second argument. Now, I had a class one time, and it was creativity and innovation. Probably the worst class I've ever had in my life. Really didn't like it. But along the way, we were doing brainstorming, and we were coming up with ideas for some fictitious thing that absolutely had nothing to do with real life. And a guy, I can't remember his name, but that's not important, had a really great idea, just as good as anybody else's. And anytime it came to any opposition, he fought and defended this idea vigorously. And my instructor said to him, as a side note, not part of the learning objective, not even really part of the class, he just made a brief statement to him: you can't get married to your idea, because no matter how good your idea is, any idea can be improved. So what I'm asking of you guys today is, please don't get married to the idea that you need to use the 5th business day. Be open, just as I will be open if you have a reason to dispute this, that possibly it would behoove you guys to take a look at the way your system's done. Once again, in closing, if we had been able to bid this thing apples to apples, I think we could have won it. Number two, regardless of what you do decide or don't decide here today, please look into the system that you're doing now, because I feel like you're losing money, and I feel like this proves it. I want to thank you guys for allowing me to speak today, and if you have any questions at all, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
When you say that with your first issue that you were not bidding apples to apples, could you explain that to me? I don't understand.
Okay, when I talk about bidding apples to apples, we did our numbers. I ran all my analysis based off the 5th day of the month. The AMM typically changes on the 6th day of the month, and when it came down to me looking at a calendar and pulling up the AMM and going back in time and pricing you guys, if I saw that the 5th paid $350 and that the 6th paid $325 and that the 6th was actually the 5th business day, I didn't jump down to $325. I paid $350. I did that as a point of ethics. I did that as a point of, this is the way it should be bid, because when you bid on the same calendar day every month, whether it be the 1st, 5th, 10th, or 15th, it's the same as paying a bill ahead or behind. When you bid on a floating day, the 5th business day, you can lose fluctuations in the market to where they're not even accounted for. So my numbers ended up being more advantageous to you guys, and to counterset that, it made my percentage go down. If I had used the exact same numbers that Mr. Jeffrey Rogers used, I feel confident that I could have bid a higher percentage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. So the 5th day is kind of like, it's a straddle day. It can be a straddle day between last month and next month.
Outstanding. Yes, exactly. Because historically, typically the AMM changes on the 6th.
And the contract that you're bidding on, what was the length of that contract?
It was, she can answer better than I can. I'm pretty sure it was 3 years, and you had the option to renew. 1 year. There you go.
And so if you could make a recommendation for the solid waste authority to change dates, would you make it the 5th business day of the month, or would you make it another day?
I think the 5th business day of the month is where the problem's coming in now, because the 5th business day of the month is a floating day.
Okay.
It could be either the 5th, 6th, or 7th calendar day. If I had a recommendation to the board, it would be to pick a calendar day, maybe your favorite number, maybe your daughter's birthday, really doesn't matter. Just pick any number and stick with it.
Because my thought is get away from the 5th, 6th, 7th day of the month, because if we know that's the trouble with the AMM, why not do it toward the middle of the month?
Exactly, I agree with you 100%. Maybe the 1st, maybe the 15th, anything would be better than the way you have it now, in my opinion, respectfully.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Looking at the proposal document under pricing, it indicates that the successful proposal will be required to provide the solid waste authority with a dated copy of the publication for the month with the updated published prices for that month. And then in parentheses, it says issued between the 1st and the 5th of each month. So we anticipated some fluctuation in the bid document. Does it come out between the 1st and the 5th, or does it only come out on the 5th?
Daily, the AMMs, there's a price daily.
One of the advantages that I have is that I have 3 attorneys sitting up here with me. Sam's an attorney, John's an attorney, Emma Ruth's an attorney. And, I don't have to go very far to get 3 different opinions.
And now I'm even more intimidated than I was to begin with. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But, we are open to any other comments that you'd like to share with us, Mike.
If you guys don't have any other questions, if Daddy doesn't have anything, I think that I've said all I
Let
can say.
me ask, and you don't be intimidated, because we all 3 have been in your position begging. I mean, not begging, but stating your case. Stating your case. I've been begging. So don't worry about that. What is it that you hope to gain through this appeal process?
It's a question that I hoped you wouldn't ask me, because I can't lie to you. I think for the Solid Waste Authority to, originally I wanted a rebid. I wanted the opportunity to bid this thing again, apples to apples. I wanted you guys to say, use, this commodity on this specific day and redo your bid. That's what I wanted. Now the market has fallen. It's fallen quite substantially. So to ask you guys to do a rebid would not be in y'all's best interest at all. I feel that if we had to do a bid today, the rate that I could give you at least would be a lot lower than the original one I gave you. Can't speak for Jeffrey. So that's probably not a good idea. What I would like to see happen is either possibly starting now or moving on in the future the next time it's bid, I would like to see it corrected to where it's bid on a certain day to give everyone a level playing field to bid against, and to also save the taxpayers and, the people of the Solid Waste Authority their money. That's what I'd like to see.
I think that's the most interesting thing I found about the information you submitted. Of course, we have to look at the actual bid documents and the responses thereto, and the responsiveness of the bids, be they flawed or not. I mean, being the request flawed or not. But to your point, or to John's question, I know that we have listening ears here, and I suspect that no matter what the outcome of our decision is, that there will be much discussion on your suggestion. And I'm sure I speak for my colleagues with respect the fact that you've been very respectful. And John asked, what are you looking for? And you didn't necessarily say, well, I want some money in my pocket. You said, I'd like for the people of Horry County to benefit from the best way of putting out bids for, in this case, scrap metal. Thank you. Is there anything else that you all would like to say?
I have nothing further.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to conclude this by saying that it's going to take us a little while, especially me. I'd like to ask your forbearance for a week or so, and we'll be getting back to you with our decision. Thank you for coming today. This meeting is concluded.